Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dal, and the War Within pre-patch event has recently been announced, which means that the expansion has just taken one step forward to the release, which is happening oh so very soon. As part of our regular coverage over on the War Within, for the most part on this channel, we've been focusing on classes and class changes and hero talents and how everything feels to play over when it comes to endgame progression. But in today's video, I kind of wanted to do a bit of a shift and talk about one of the modes of endgame progression, which has been the Delves, an open world endgame system that allows players to be able to interact with open world content or instance delve content solo while having a full-blown system of progression when it comes to gearing a character as well as seasonal rewards. I spent a couple of weeks over with the Delves recently on the beta, and I wanted to kind of do a full holistic overview of the system, the rewards, and what you can expect for season 1. As always, if you guys enjoy this kind of regular War Within updates, be sure to follow the channel. Otherwise, let's take a deep dive deep into the Delves themselves. So first things first, what even are Delves in the War Within expansion? Is it an activity that's going to be mandatory for everybody to participate? From all we know, from what we've been told, they're kind of like raids, kind of like dungeons, but a little bit more bite-sized. So I first wanted to go over exactly what Delves are and what they feel like to actually play through. They're meant to be somewhat similar to dungeons or raids, but maybe even closer to scenarios of Pandaria if you've been playing around with the MOP remix as of recently. Think of them more as islands from Battle for Azeroth or Torghast from Shadowlands, though depending on the person you probably have a lot of bad memories with either one of these two experiences, but just basically take the bad parts out of both islands and Torghast and only leave in the good parts, and that's essentially what Delves are. They are on their own a 10 to 15 minute adventure where you can either queue it up as a solo player or in a group of up to 5 players. It doesn't really matter what role you play because any class and role combination should be able to complete them fairly easily. You also will be joined inside of a delve with a player NPC very similar to the island NPC, so they're utilizing that system to give you a quick companion, and that companion helps you solo a lot of the content, and the ability to solo delves and be able to do solo open world end game progression content that rewards good gear is actually something a huge portion of the WoW community is looking forward to, because there's a sizable chunk of the audience that experiences the game in that specific way. Every single one of the delves will focus on a couple of core things like exploration, and players will be heavily incentivized to explore inside of the delve. Not only can exploration reward you with power in order to make those delves easier to get through, but also plenty of resources and plenty of treasures, collectibles, as well as consumables for you to use inside of delves. You also have varied objectives in delves. There are a total 12 delves, and that's going to be 12 instances that you'll quickly get used to. However, every time you go into a delve, either on a daily or on a weekly rotation, this seems to vary so far on the beta, but you might be able to go into one delve and your objective will be more puzzle solving or more platforming or exploration focused, where combat isn't as necessary. But the next time you go in, it might be a little bit more straightforward and a bit more combat heavy. So it can give you a few different objectives out of every single delve every time you go into them. But for the most part, each delve, you shouldn't feel like you need to have to go in and run and gun to complete the actual delve and complete all of your objectives, as these objectives can be solved multiple ways over. So if you want to be a sneaky rogue, avoiding combat, getting all the objectives out of the way without having to fight anybody for the most part, you should still be able to do so if the objectives does end up benefiting your class in particular. Delves will also have its own sort of gear progression, similar to raids and similar to dungeons that offer PvE gear, but their own form of progression that doesn't necessarily have to be done side by side other raid and PvE content. If you want to focus primarily on delves as a way of progressing, you could, and they're supposed to be a standalone form of progression, kind of like a fourth leg of endgame progression in World of Warcraft outside of dungeons, raids, or PvP. And unlike Mythic Plus Dungeons or Shadowlands, Torghast, or Islands from BFA, there isn't a timer or really a specific reason as to why you need to complete a delve as early as soon as possible. There is no timer, and you could take your time with the delve. You could go and explore, you could take it a little bit slow. If there's a puzzle, you could just sit there for an entire 5 minutes and solve a puzzle. The delve isn't going anywhere. It is something that lets you accomplish these activity on your own time, which is a huge benefit for many of you. Now, delves are very similar to Torghast, will come in different tiers, and there will also be seasonal activities inside of these tiers as well. Like Torghast wings, you'll be able to basically choose which difficulty of a delve you want to choose. The higher tier usually means higher difficulty, but also better rewards. During the very launch of the expansion, you will have tier 1 through 3 that will be available at the beginning, though tiers 4 through 11 will be available once season 1 starts, and that's where a majority of your season 1 progression when it comes to gear is going to come from. However, the highest tier that awards you gear, very similar to Mythic Plus, is a tier 8, similar to how Mythic Plus dungeons stop awarding gear at above plus 10 difficulty. But however, you can still do tiers 9, 10, and 11 if you want more difficulty, but if you're just looking for gear progression, there will be a cap of the difficulty you need to achieve in order to be able to farm delves for gear and items. One of the biggest parts of delves is the ability to solo them, though players won't be going into a delve alone. They'll always be accompanied by a companion, which rotates every single season. And the very first companion that I have at the very beginning will be Bran Bronzebeard for the season 1. And you'll be able to customize Bran either inside of the Dornogal city or anytime you enter inside of a delve. Bran has a couple of different roles that can help better customize for your delving experience. Bran for the most part can either take a form as a damage dealer from range or as a healer as a more support role rather than anything, and each version of Bran comes with various different abilities. Bran can either focus on pure damage, where he'll place steel traps all over the place to trap foes while bleeding them, or even interrupt enemies with his whip. He'll be able to jump on his mount and start soaring through the sky, bombarding enemies from above. But also Bran can play a little bit more of a support role, where instead of throwing traps, he'll throw potions for you to pick up so you can heal yourself. If you ever drop low, he can offer you emergency supplies in order to help you get topped up to shape, and can even remove stuns, diseases, poisons, and even purge offensive enemy buffs. Bran can then be further modified with curios, either combat curios or utility curios. Combat curios can debuff foes, create an idol that can taunt enemies off you, and even launch you into the air so that you can come down with a big Goomba stomp. As for the utility curios, these could be a variety of different wacky effects, such as ways to enhance your overall damage or healing but trade off with maximum health, or even a momentary bloodlust that even recovers cooldowns, and even ways to augment your character by making them bigger and stronger, or smaller and faster to get through the delve a little bit quicker. Now, delves have their own form of gearing progression with a couple of different ways of acquiring gear. For example, we have a gear vendor with a Sir Murgaton, which sells you a variety of different items for a currency that can be obtained from doing delves, which is a war-bound transferable currency. That means if your alts or your main earn any of this currency, you can then kind of trade it across all of your characters and be able to use it at the vendor if you want to buy multiple pieces of gear on multiple characters. The vendor offers a couple of things, from ways to modify one of the rewards, which is a mount that's available with the delves, which we'll talk about in a bit here, a bunch of toys and a bunch of other collectibles, but also gear, which you'll unlock as you do progression throughout the delve content. This gear starts out at adventurer level with a minimum item level of 567. But the gear is also warbound. That means if you end up buying these items on a character, you can then stick them in your warbound bank and then pick them up on another character, and it can kind of be used in a way to gear out your alts using your main character. The majority of the gear that you'll get from a delve, you'll actually be able to discover it while inside of delves themselves. And the higher difficulty of delve that you run into, the better the gear that you can get out of these delves in the process. In one of the higher tier delves, I was able to start getting some veteran purple gear that starts out at roughly 590-ish item level. This gear, being veteran, does mean that it can then be utilized at the creation catalyst in order to be turned into tier sets whenever that gets enabled for season 1 of War Within. Though as you do more delves, you also will be able to fill out the weekly boxes, which have their own slot inside of the weekly Great Vault, from the raid section, dungeon section, and the world section, and the world and delves are kind of part of one and the same. For example, I did a tier 6 delve, or actually I did a couple of delves, but the lowest item level, that reward that I can get from them, is a tier 6. And from a tier 6, I'll be able to get a 606 item level, though if I do it as a tier 7, I can upgrade it to a 410. And if I do 3 delves at a tier 8, then I should be able to get gear that's equivalent to heroic raid quality or mythic +5 difficulty, which offers an opportunity for you to be able to get some of the better end game gear. You're not really going to be able to to draw mythic gear out of the delves, but heroic gear can be upgraded with the upgrade system of flight stones, or they're called valor stones in this expansion, as well as crests, which continues on from Dragonflight into this expansion. That heroic gear can be upgraded from hero track to a mythic track quality, so this gear can be upgraded to be mythic gear adjacent, with just a handful of item levels away from some of the best rating gear, for instance. Also, as you do delves, you'll notice that there's different types of delves. Some delves will be plain delves that don't have any kind of glowing effects to them, while other delves will have an extra additional glow about them. And those delves are bountiful delves. Those bountiful delves have better treasures inside of them, both when it comes to exploration, but also when it comes to actually finishing out the delves, and the type of quality of chests and the rewards that you can get from those delves are upgraded. Though, in order to be able to open some of those better chests, you're required to get a couple of different keys, specifically restored coffer keys, which are used to open some of those bountiful coffers that have some of the better gear available. Now, there's a couple of different ways that you can earn those coffer keys, and most of them will come from open world activities, with things such as weekly quests, as well as those new grind spots called World Soul Memories, where essentially you just go there with other players and grind out mobs as much as you can until you are out of the phase. You'll be given roughly 5 minutes or so to grind out the area, and while inside of there you'll have little rares and little events spawning in from time to time, and the more of those things that you can defeat during that time, the more fragments you can get in order to create those keys. So essentially you go out into the open world and you interact with a variety of different content to get keys, and then take those keys inside of delves to open some of those better chests. Said before, delves are meant to be its own form of endgame progression with plenty of its own seasonal rewards, where you'll see things such as toys and other unique items such as cosmetics that Sir Fingley will be able to sell you, but also a lot of these items you will be able to earn just by running delves inside of War Within. One of the unique items you can get is Rulk's new robe backpiece, and there's even a unique seasonal version of this item that you'll be able to unlock while doing delves, specifically from the achievement of Nemesis, where you have to defeat Zekvir in his lair before the season 2 of delves is open for the Zekvir's raptorial spine. Zekvir, by the way, is going to be apparently a boss encounter in a secretive 13th delve, and apparently that 13th delve may end up being changed every single season, so there's going to be a secret boss fight for players to discover, a boss fight that currently we don't have any ability to test over on the beta, but it essentially should be similar to the Mage Tower from Legion or from the middle of Shadowlands when they brought it back in, you versus the boss. However, as a delve, you can run this as a 5-man in order to have an easier time inside of the delve, though there's even a unique achievement behind defeating Zekvir solo that allows you to unlock a unique version of a mount that's available from delves, and that mount is the dirigible. Now, at the moment, I don't have the ability to actually unlock this mount. I've done the quest line in order to be able to do it, but because of a beta bug, I can't unlock it, and you can see it's kind of still not really fully finished with a couple of UI elements, but that's essentially going to be this seasonal mount, Seasonal Delver's Dirigible, which is fully customizable. There's a couple of different variations you can unlock of this mount, one over here and one over here, and there's a couple of different ways that you can modify it, from its color schemes to the wings to the engine, and it's essentially a customizable mount for players that venture into delves. And defeating Zekvir, that I mentioned earlier, the secretive delve boss of the delve season, essentially will unlock you a void version of a delver's dirigible, which looks absolutely fantastic. It's essentially like a way to, you know how you get dragons in Dragonflight and you can get like skin for them from some of the endgame bosses, like a Razagath skin. It's essentially going to be that, but for the delver's dirigible, a void version of the delver's dirigible. Besides this, delves will also have their own achievement mount, which is Glory of the Delver achievement, which awards you the Ivory Goliaths. This is very similar to the Glory of the War Within Raider or War Within Dungeoneer for various seasons, and essentially one for the delves. I'm assuming that this one will be available at all times, but maybe they'll add other seasonal mounts, maybe as we get additional delves and additional secret delve bosses swapped out from season to season. But with that being said, that's essentially going to be the entire delve system. It's meant to be its own standalone system that isn't necessary if, let's say, you just want to focus on Mythic Plus in this expansion, or raiding, or just PvP. Delves are supposed to present players another alternative way of gearing out their character, collecting a bunch of cosmetics and transmogs. And Delves essentially is an attempt in order to find ways to take open world content and give it a purpose, give it a reason, combine it together with the instance version of Delves, which are soloable, to give players that ability to interact with more open world and game progression. And it's a very exciting system that I'm hoping pans out in a long term, because there's a large swath of players that interact with the game primarily through open world activities, primarily through more casual content. Like dungeons and raids are really not their forte and not really part of their interest for the most part, but they still have pride in how they end up playing their class, and they still want some kind of like an end game solo progression where difficulty is rewarded with the different gear upgrades and items. And this is essentially what Delves are supposed to do. And I'm glad that I've been able to experiment with Delves and play around with them a lot. You can actually really get sucked into them. And the best part of Delves, I'd say so far, has been just the speed at which you can just cycle through delve to delve to delve. Where in Mythic Plus Dungeons, you have to sit there in LFGQ, find a group, join it, and hope the group doesn't fall apart before you encounter the final boss so you can get through the dungeon. The same thing can be said for raids. Sometimes raids just kind of fall apart, but with the delve, you could jump in by yourself. If you're looking for a challenging bit of content, you can scale up this delve's difficulty to a higher tier in order to get the difficulty you're looking for. Interact with the delve in any way you see fit, utilize your entire class toolkit, and customize your companion in order to be able to have an easier time with the delve. And honestly, after testing them out, I cannot wait to see what the 13 delves looks like. If it's as difficult as the initial Legion Mage Tower or whatever they brought in for the Shadowlands version of Mage Tower, if the difficulty is just right, I think I'm gonna have a lot of fun doing this content over and over again. But at the end of the day, I want to hear you guys' thoughts on the delves in the comments down below. What are your thoughts on the delves in general? Would you be interested in them in particular? Is this the type of content you're looking for, or are you even thinking about trying out once it is available? And as always, let me know all of those thoughts in the comments down below. As per usual, if you guys enjoyed this video or found it informative, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. I would very much appreciate it. And as always, in the description of every single video and live stream, we have a link to our Discord community channel. Probably the best place to reach out to me directly in case you want to let me know what you thought about this video or hang out with the rest of the community to discuss some of the upcoming changes. Join our Discord to become part of the community. But otherwise, thank you all so much for watching this video. I do hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know all of your thoughts down below. And as always, I'll see all of you guys in another video.